You longtime listeners know I love the Ramones. I mean, the first time I heard Road to Ruin, which had this song on it, I Wanna Be Sedated, I mean, it just blew me away. Because at the time, rock radio didn't play it. In fact, rock radio hardly ever played the Ramones. But I heard this, and it was so bouncy and happy. I mean, this in particular was the song that blew me away, but I love the whole album and became a fan of all their music. And I found out from Marky Ramone's new memoir called Punk Rock Blitzkrieg that this was the first song that he worked on. So I'm happy to say we have Marky Ramone back with us, man. How are you?
All right, how you doing?
Doing great.
Yeah, that was the first song. Took 2 takes. And we got the drum track, and then everybody else overdubbed, and that's the result.
Wow. It is, that's a really fascinating story. And I want to get back to Road to Ruin, but I want to talk a little bit about your early life and when you were recording with Dust, which was, if you haven't heard the Dust albums, you've got to listen. I mean, it's amazing. You were 17 years old on that album.
I was in the 10th grade going on to the 11th grade. I was in high school, basically, and metal wasn't really around in America. I was only out in England for about a year. We already wrote the first album, so before we heard any metal from England, it was already written. Black Sabbath came to our shores in 70 via Warner Brothers, and that's what solidified metal. But there weren't any really metal American bands, so we figured, we're from Brooklyn. It's a very rough neighborhood, so instead of joining gangs and doing negative things, we did positive things and formed a group, and that was our answer to metal. One of the few bands who started metal in America. I mean, if you really count them on your fingers, who was really there in 1970? You know what I mean?
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, because there wasn't even the term heavy metal yet.
No, that was coined. That term was coined by Lester Bangs.
Yeah.
He started that term. And, I mean, it was mentioned in the Steppenwolf song, but to describe a genre, that Lester Bangs came up with that.
It was during this time you would hang out at different places, the Fillmore, you met Hendrix and Zeppelin. Talk a little bit about that period, the people you met and bonded with.
Well, I knew a guy who played guitar who was Jimi Hendrix's protege, and his name is Velvet Turner, and he's in the making of Electric Ladyland, which was Hendrix's third album. So he took me to a club in the city. I was too young. He was my authority figure because he was older. And you were allowed to go in with a parent or an older brother if you didn't drink, which I didn't at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So we went into the club, and there they were, sitting at a round table, Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, and the new drummer of the Jimi Hendrix Experience, Buddy Miles, which they eventually called the Band of Gypsies, where they made that great live album, Live at the Fillmore. So they were rehearsing in town as a band, because they were new. And Jim Morrison was ready to do, I think, the Ed Sullivan Show or one of those shows, those variety shows, and do Touch Me. So it was around that time, and then I'm hanging out at the table with them, and I'm this 16-year-old kid, I didn't know what to say. I was in awe. So the next day I went to school. I told all my friends. They didn't believe me. So that's the only time I wished I had a cell phone, because I would have had someone taking a photo, or even a Polaroid. I don't care.
Yeah,
but
sure.
That's life. You just have the memory, and I had that opportunity. So I was very grateful to have met those guys.
I see. So Mitch Mitchell wasn't with the band at that time, probably?
No, he was out. Hendrix wanted Buddy because he wanted more of a funk groove kind of feel. So he got Buddy Miles and his friend Billy Cox on bass, got rid of Noel Redding, and they formed the band of Gypsies. And did that great album. And then later on at the end, he got Mitch Mitchell back, and then he passed away, you know.
Yeah, a number of years later, I talked to Mitch Mitchell. They played at my college, a band called Ramatam. Remember Ramatam?
Well, I remember him doing that album.
Yeah.
I don't remember the group, but I remember the name and him associated with it.
Yeah, and I asked him a little bit about Hendrix. I remember, and this was before I was on the radio. I mean, but he was a nice guy. But he said, I just don't want to talk anything about Hendrix. And I thought that was kind of weird.
Maybe he was told he can't. Maybe he was just there to move on, think of the future.
That's what I felt. That's why. Yeah.
About the Ramones, it's enough. I mean, everything's known already, and they all passed away, and it was a pretty sad situation. My bandmates and friends dying. So when I talk about the Ramones, I try to keep it minimal because it just brings back a lot of, death. There's enough death in the world. We don't need to keep constantly talking about it because we have to celebrate life. We have to be happy that that we're on this planet and that we can we can function and we're alive. A lot of death in the last couple of years concerning me, my situation with my bandmates and etc. So I understand what Mitch Mitchell meant.
Absolutely.
I mean, it was horrible. It was the way he passed away was sad. I mean, they were working him to death. We're talking about Hendrix now.
Yeah.
They were working him to death. He needed things to stay up, and he eventually just passed away from just total exhaustion and drug abuse.
Wow. As you sat down to write the book with these emotions you just shared with us, it must have been tough and I don't know, the experience of going through this in such detail, and I guess you had some kind of stream of consciousness. Talk about those feelings.
They were four of my close friends and bandmates, and I was with the band for 15 years, and I did 1,700 shows, and we toured in the United States in a van. So that's how close we were. When you're in an enclosed area like that, you definitely get to know people, and when you're on the stage with them, you get to know them, and they become part of your life, ingrained there. They're definitely there. So even when they weren't there, they're there because you put on the radio. Sedated comes on, or you put on the TV, Rock or High School comes on, or a video, Pet Sematary. So you're like, there's always a constant reminder. But you gotta think of the good things. In my book, I wrote about all of that, how I managed to deal with all that stuff. But they succumbed to cancer. One of them, unfortunately, had an addiction problem, died from that. So three of them were afflicted by cancer, and cancer isn't prejudiced towards anybody. You could be the healthiest person in the world, and you can get it.
That's for sure. I remember when I had Joey Ramone on my TV show, he wanted to buy some heavy hands to start working out. He was concerned a little bit about his health back then.
He was getting a little plumpy at the end there, but his workout was really on the stage. When we played for an hour and 15 minutes, that was really a big calorie burner. I mean, I tested when I go into the studio on my own, I count my calories. So if I play for an hour and 20 minutes nonstop alone, doing my Ramone set that I do, I burn 1,200 calories.
I'm not surprised. Such a powerful drummer. It's amazing.
Well, they can. Well, I don't know who brought this up or who decided to call us athletes. But there are different phases of drumming. I mean, there are some drummers where you go, wow, that's an athlete. And there are some drummers you go, oh, big deal, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, I guess it's up to the drummer what category, if he fits into that category,
Talking to Marky Ramone about his memoir, recently out, Punk Rock Blitzkrieg, My Life
it just
as
came out on a paperback.
Yeah, congratulations on that.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. I mean, who knew,
Yeah, and Rockaway, Beach, rock and roll, high school. Do you remember rock and roll radio? That's one of my favorites. The KKK took my baby away. She's a sensation. Jeez, yeah. I mean,
every song's a hit.
And it's so strange, isn't it, that radio pretty much, aside from WNEW-FM,
right.
And I'm from New York myself, so aside from that, AOR radio ignored the Ramones, and I hated that. That was something I fought against.
Yeah, until like 10, 15 years ago.
Yeah.
We weren't played. Now it's every minute, every day, and, obviously a lot of it had to do with the deaths of Johnny, Joey, and Dee Dee. But I think what happened was the newer generation, thank you, everybody, picked up on the Ramones and realized, hey, how come the last generation didn't pick up on it as quick as we did? So it's great to see the new generation, but also it's great to know that the older generation who grew up on the Ramones continue to still listen to us,
Yeah, absolutely.
And they continue to turn on other generations about the music.
Johnny Lydon told me that it was the Ramones that inspired the Sex Pistols.
Oh, you mean he finally admitted it?
Oh, he said this years ago. Back in this was probably about 93.
Oh, okay.
When he told me that.
Yeah, because he, the English always want to take credit, but we did start punk, and they did take a lot from us, and so did the Clash, but we liked them. We liked their albums, and I got along very well with members of the Clash and some of the Pistols. And, what happened was when they were recording their first album, the Sex Pistols, they had a copy of the Ramones album there, and they wanted the engineer to make sure that it sounded as good as that. So that's how things work,
It's interesting. One of the reasons you wrote this book is you wanted to clear the air on some stories. And one of these stories, I heard it wrong myself. And that was when Spector was producing the album, the rumor was that he was hard to work with, and he actually took out his pistol and aimed at you guys or shot in the ceiling.
No, that's all baloney.
Right. Talk about the real, what was going on.
Well, Phil had a reputation of gun carrying, which he did, and he had a license, which is strictly legal, and he would take out the guns in his studio and fire them in the ceiling or, just play with them. But with us, he never pointed a gun. There is a video out where Johnny Ramone is saying to the camera, Phil, what are you going to shoot me? Phil wasn't even in the studio. Phil wasn't even there with Johnny. He was just assuming that if they did have an argument that Phil would shoot him. That's how afraid he was of Phil. But he would never do that. He would come into the studio, start working, and take the guns off and hang them up on a rack, a clothing rack, or leave them on the side of the board, the recording board. So he wasn't into shooting any of us, because I think he knew if the gun went off, he wouldn't have a band to produce.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah.
That was just a bunch of gossip, rumor, and I hate to blow anyone's bubble about it, but that didn't happen.
Right. Well, I'm glad you cleared the air, because that was something that I had heard.
Oh, believe me, I would have left that in the book if that happened. It makes a good reading, but
that's not true.
I mean, that's why I read all the other books, and then I decided to write mine just to give it the reality of what it was really like and what really happened.
And by the way, the book is brutally honest. It's not sugar coated. It
No.
really gives you the picture. And some of the stories, oh, there's so many interesting stories. One that comes to mind is you were at Great Adventure, and I think it was where you took a frog and put it on. Talk about that, because that was he freaked. We're talking about who freaked that? Dee
Ramone.
Yeah.
We were backstage, and the area we were playing had a lot of grassy areas, and there were frogs, little salamanders. So I took the frog, and I threw it on Dee, and it landed on his chest. So you would have thought I threw an alligator at him, you know what I mean? So, he was like brushing it off and yelling at me just because of a little green frog. But that's how me and Dee were together. We were the closest of the Ramones, my friendship with them. And now that was just one episode.
I know you wanted to teach him a lesson, and you got really strict there for a while. You said, I forgot. Next time you do that, the knife's going to go in you or something.
Right. He pulled the knife out on me, and right. I took it away from him, and I didn't like that. I don't believe in violence. I don't like weapons. I don't like guns. I don't like knives. I don't like any of that. And I warned him. I said, "You do it again, and I hate to think that way, and try to think violently." And I just said, "Don't do it again." You know.
Yeah. When I did the introduction, I talked about that song, I Wanna Be Sedated, which actually I remember that I can still see myself in the place I was living. I had the stereo on, and I kept repeating that song because it was so happy. It was such a, that's what it reminds me of. The Ramones music to me, it really isn't punk. It's like real short, tight, rockin' versions of cool, fun songs. It isn't like hatred or meanness or anything, It's like, that's what the stereotypical punk was all about.
That was the problem.
Right.
In 1977, 76, 77, 78, all these disc jockeys were looking at these sensationalized album covers and write-ups from England, with these punk bands wearing Nazi stickers, and it turned them off, I understand that. So it took a while to let these people know that we were just a true American band, and that we despised Nazis and all that stuff. And, that's what we had to put up with,
Johnny was kind of controlling. Johnny Ramone was kind of a controlling force in the band. And talk a little bit about that. Why do you think he had that control or wanted that control?
Well, he wanted the control. He didn't have it.
Right.
His bark was bigger than his bite. Somebody had to take control of things, where we were going to play next. And, he acted as mini manager. But, we needed somebody because Dee wasn't going to do it. Joey definitely wasn't going to do it. And I wasn't going to do it. So we left it up to him to do it. And in a way, he wanted to. So we felt it was a good idea, So, he hardly wrote any songs, and he didn't play lead on any of the albums. It was other people who played lead guitar on the albums. So, that was his part of coordinating things, So I guess he felt that was one reason to be that way, because, the lack of other things. But it all worked out. The songs came out great. The productions were good. We always played the best we could,
Mm-hmm. It's a Marky Ramone. We're talking about his book, Punk Rock Blitzkrieg, and it is a great read. It is a great book, and it's now out in paperback. And again, with I Wanna Be Sedated, I should say,
yeah.
You actually, it was interesting, you said it was kind of slow when you heard it, and you said, we got to pick up the pace here.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and that really worked.
Yeah, it was. I was handed a demo of a rehearsal, a really bad tape, And these are the songs that eventually were on Road to Ruin on the album. So when I heard Sedated, I brought it to the attention of Johnny, Joey, and Dee Dee that it's too slow. I mean, I understand you want me to hear this and learn it properly, but I can learn it if it's a little faster. So I picked up the pace, and that was the outcome. What you hear now, like in rock and roll radio, the drum fill, I put that in there, and made the timing for that because on the demo it was too fast.
Well,
way too fast.
Yeah, and I could really tell your signature now that I'm familiar with you and your work. You could tell that force. Road to Ruin was, to me, the album that really, I think radio, at least most people in radio before would just dismiss it as punk and not even listen to it. But that was the album. I said, you got to listen to this.
We needed to do a different album. They already did three-chord albums already. They needed to change a little. Lester Bangs, who was writing for Cream magazine at the time and other rock magazines, said to me, you're going to get the next album has to be different, because if it isn't, you're just going to be tagged as another three-chord album. So, the thing is that the songs were kind of written already, and he was right. So when the Beatles did Revolver, before that they were doing Chuck Berry songs. They were doing, the cute rock songs, and of course they're great. But when Revolver came out, you noticed the change in depth of what else they could do, and that was Road to Ruin.
That was it. That's exactly what I'm talking about. And the favorite songs for you, besides that one, I know that one is, talk about some of the other songs that mean something to you, a little special.
Well, I liked Rockville High School because it was in the movie. I liked Sheena as a punk rocker because at that moment it was a great song, along with The Blank Generation, another song that I was on with Richard Hell, which was the punk anthem of New York, but Tommy was on Sheena. I also like KKK. I like Blitzkrieg Bop. I like Pet Sematary. I like, there's so many.
And you wrote, that was really quick, too. Stephen King he told you about the movie and you kind of wrote it, and it was written in about an hour?
Got the book, handed it the book, Dee Dee went out, read it, and wrote it. And the next day it was completely finished. I mean, it was already done, but completely tweaked. So that's Dee Dee for you. I mean, he was just an unbelievable songwriter.
I remember Psychotherapy, MTV. That was one of those videos. I think MTV said they had to edit some of it. It was just too violent.
Well, yeah, it was very bloody, violent, and everything. And that song came off an album which I really didn't like. It was called Subterranean Jungle.
Yeah. And
the production is so bad because the producer had no idea or a clue of how we should sound. So, every producer wants to put their own stamp on everything, but it definitely didn't work. The drum sound definitely didn't work on that album. So that's when I decided not to play on Time Has Come Today.
There you go. And a couple other things here I want to talk about. This is, a lot of things in this book I did not even know, and I've been a fan of the Ramones for a long time. But you have Bono invited the Ramones to a huge show in Spain.
Yeah.
Talk about, some of the highlights of the career. Talk about that real quick.
Well, Bono always said if it wasn't for the Ramones, they wouldn't be a band, because that's how they learned to play their instruments, listening to Ramones albums. Then obviously they became who they were. But they asked us to play with them in Spain, 2 shows we did, and they let us open up for them, and it was a lot of fun. And then Pearl Jam, and then other groups, and then things started getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And we were always grateful for these bands for giving us a shot for playing in front of more people. So, U2 was one of them, and, we were very happy for that.
Marky did 2 stints with the band. He did the first stint, 78 to 83, and left the band. We're going to talk about that next. And in 1987, he came back to 1996. And so you were just drinking, having fun. It started off, and it got out of control. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, I don't believe anyone should get should drink or do drugs before a show. I used to party after. I feel that when a band or individual does that, they cheat the audience because it's not all them. They have to rely on something to get it across. I liked drinking beer with my buddies, and after a while, it started getting out of hand. So I was asked to leave the group. For 4 years, I was out, and I straightened up, came back, and the first song I did when I came back was Pet Sematary for Stephen King's movie. But when something's getting to you like that, you got to stop it because it'll win. You're not going to win. So, any addiction you have, you should find help as soon as you can before it overcomes you. I never smoked cigarettes. I never did the hard drug thing. I wasn't into that. I just like to have a few beers after the show, but the few beers became, 6-pack alone, and then it was, you got another one, so, who wants to live like that,
Was there one incident that broke the camel's back?
There were a lot of them. I missed one show out of the 1,700 shows I did, so that was one of them. I never missed a show in my life, so that's pretty good.
Was that then there was a time, did you drive a car into a storefront?
Yep, yeah. I blacked out at the wheel. So, that was definitely another thing that helped me stop.
And that's the great thing. He has stopped. It's been how many years now?
32.
God bless. That's fantastic, man. That's I mean, geez, every day is probably a new day to confront. And
yeah, and the bottles of beer are bigger than ever,
yeah.
And there's more proof in the booze. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But hey, if everybody, people want to have a good time, that's up to them.
By the way, yeah, right. You're not preaching.
I'm not a preacher. Have fun, live your life. If it's getting to you too much and you can't stop, there's always help,
And you got tomato sauce? Yeah, that's cool.
I got a pasta sauce. I got a hot sauce. And in fact, I got my own beer line. But I didn't drink it. But the makers of the beer, a wine taster, when he tastes wine, he swishes it around his mouth. That's what I did with the beer, and you spit it out. And it was great. But the thing is that I did it because part of the proceeds goes to a really good charity called Musicians Without Borders. Mm-hmm. And it helps musicians. So that was good to do. I wanted to do it. That was one of the reasons why I did it,
Joey, I loved the band, but Joey was the one I got to know, and I never got to meet any of you. And I got to tell you, man, many, many hours of enjoyment, fun, after work, getting in a good mood, getting ready to party, whatever. I love the Ramones, and you're part in it, Marky.
Thanks.
It was great having you back on the show. Back on the show. And the best website for you is markyramone.com, right?
You can go to Marky Ramone Official Facebook and follow me on Twitter and Instagram.
Absolutely, man. Well, you have a great rest of the day.
You too.